on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. And Nick Barris here with you on a Wednesday. And we've got a good show as always. We're going to open up the phone lines for you, give you a chance if you'd like to join in the conversation as we talk about medical malpractice. Yes, we do this every month. And the question is, can you think, do you yourself or someone you know have perhaps a situation you'd like to discuss regarding a doctor, a hospital, a treatment, something you felt didn't quite go right and you wonder, all right, was this just a normal run-of-the-mill type of thing that sometimes happens and just doesn't work out exactly, or was there something more here? Maybe medical malpractice. Well, who else better to talk about that than a malpractice attorney and one of the best ones in the entire states with us this morning, Clint Kelly. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning to you.
It is good to see you.
Good to see you,
it's
too.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Listen, yeah, I guess I've got some cases I want to talk to you about. Right. We'll get into it, but as always, at the beginning of the show, we've got the number on the screen. Medical malpractice, by the way. I guess we always mention that, and I have you say about what kind of cases you handle. What is medical malpractice?
It's a major medical mistake that produces a major medical injury.
Okay, so it's basically that, outside the standard of care.
Outside the standard of care, those are the rules that the doctors and the nurses and other hospital professionals have to follow. If they fail to act in accordance with those rules or break them, and they cause a major injury, then you might have a lawsuit. And
the mistakes can either be completely accidental. Can they sometimes be willful?
They can be willful, they can be reckless, they can be, sometimes mistakes happen, Nick, that are not the product of a violation of the rules. They can be mistakes that are simply part of what we call bad outcomes.
Yeah.
Where someone's trying to follow the rules, but they accidentally make a mistake and it's not actionable, it's not something you would sue over. And you and I talk about that from time to time. The cases I take are the ones where they're bad mistakes. They're cases where the doctors or the nurses violated their own rules and someone was badly injured or killed as a result.
Over the years, and you and I have known each other, and I've learned so much from you. Certain cases just stand in my mind, and we'll talk about some of the more recent ones. Wasn't there one you told me about a surgeon sometimes who would be doing the operation, and as he's finishing, he would kind of tattoo or write his name on an org? What was this?
Yeah, this was a surgeon who was he was a cardiac surgeon, and he had a habit of taking a laser. A lot of times they'll use lasers to cauterize bleeding, and he would etch his initials onto heart tissue or fascia, which is the muscle tissue that surrounds the heart, the pericardium. Etch his name on there.
Just for kick, not that it was going to hurt someone. How was that caught? Did someone squeal on him, or did they have to reopen another doctor and they're like, what the heck?
He was reopened, and when the next surgeon went in there and saw it, recorded the chart. And he knew what it was. He knew obviously someone had taken a laser and tried to inscribe their name on there and noted it in the chart. The patient found out about it, sued the doctor. I'm not sure what the result was.
I was going to say, what kind of damages would be there? I mean, that's inappropriate, unprofessional conduct. If it didn't harm the patient physically, maybe there's a mental issue once he learns it's there. Would there be damages?
Yeah, I don't know what the harm would be other than you've got someone who has put their likeness into your body without your permission. That may be it. If you walk around in life, Nick, and you've got someone else's initials on your heart, it probably wouldn't bother me.
Right.
I mean, if the guy did a good job and sewed me up properly, it wouldn't be a problem. But some people would feel kind of dirty or slimed by that some dude put his initials on their heart without their permission.
I would think, I wouldn't like that. The other one that you talked about was the individual that went in for surgery, and for whatever reason, he still had his cell phone in his pocket or something, and it recorded the surgeon talking during the procedure. He didn't know anything about it till he gets home and he goes, oh, well, look at this, and he plays it back. And what he heard upset him.
Right. He had taken his britches off and put them next to the gurney.
Okay.
It was just a colonoscopy, a routine colonoscopy.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
And the doctor who was performing the colonoscopy was making all types of critical comments about the patient, things that the colonoscopy physician didn't like about the patient. It was kind of ugly.
Just insulting his physical appearance, other things.
The worst part was that they were joking about a sexually transmitted disease, which the person never had. But because the doctor had mentioned it in the procedure, a nurse wrote it down. and
so ends up on his file.
Ends up in his file. And so when the patient found out about this by taking the cell phone and just, realized that there had been a recording, heard all this on the recording, went and got his medical records and saw that there was mention of an STD.
Okay.
I think it was rule out, and I don't remember what it was. I don't know if it's genital warts or something like that. It was like rule it out. Well, of course, he didn't have it. So not only is he being disparaged in front of other people during a procedure which was wholly improper, but also there's a suggestion he has a sexually transmitted disease that he did not have.
Wow.
And, Nick, they're just, I know doctors and nurses probably get bored in surgery. Sometimes we get bored in trials where it breaks and say things or do things. But there's just, there's a certain line of decency you don't cross. Yeah, we're professionals. We're supposed to be guarded in how we speak, particularly if it might harm one of our clients or harm one of our patients. And that's just what that doctor did was completely unprofessional.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know why. Those two have stuck with me all along. I remember that. I wanted to ask you just right now, as you joined me after a month has passed. Any case, I've got some I want to bring up, but anything that's jumped out at you, any changes with the law, any observations you've made that you'd like to share? I know sometimes you do. I haven't seen any super high-profile malpractice cases recently.
No, I'll tell you what I have noticed. So it's touches or tangential to medical malpractice, and that is the damage caps. You and I've talked about that in the past. Our Supreme Court heard arguments earlier in the month on whether these caps violate the Tennessee Constitution. Our Constitution, when it was enacted in 1796, reserved to the people the right to be juries and decide our own cases.
Right.
We decided that we as citizens would decide our cases and other people's cases. We did not reserve that right to the government.
Right.
And in the Bill of Rights, or what we call in Tennessee the Declaration of Rights, those enumerated rights are rights that we retained from the government to make sure the government could not interfere with them. Long story short, the argument is if you have the right to trial by jury, doesn't that right include the right to have the jury decide your damages?
Yeah.
Because the right to trial by jury does not say, oh, by the way, the government can decide what your damages are. And that's what a cap is. It's a pre-assigned governmental decision on what the maximum amount you can recover. And it really harms the most catastrophically injured people, because if you put a $750,000 cap on what they call non-economic damages, that's pain and suffering, disfigurement, loss of enjoyment of life, lost services from a spouse.
Sure.
If you're in a wheelchair, that $750,000 is minuscule compared to someone who may just have a broken ankle or someone who's perhaps lost the use of their leg. So we believe, and I think the Supreme Court's going to find, knock on wood, that the caps violate our right to a jury trial. And I've said this all along, Nick, if juries can decide whether someone goes to lethal injection or life in prison, surely we can trust juries to decide what the proper amount of damages are.
That's really an excellent point when you bring up the death penalty aspect of it. There's nothing more serious than that.
Correct.
Okay, but I just wanted to throw this out, and I know that many of the businesses probably lobbied and got the legislators to put these caps in place to protect them from a devastating verdict. But at the same time, wouldn't there be some cases in history where clearly the verdicts came back and for whatever reason were absurdly large? And you may, as an attorney, that's is representing someone who's been injured, could say there's no such thing as one absurdly large. You tell me what your arm's worth, Nick, and I understand that. But I know that there have been some cases that have been in the news, not recently, where there were ridiculous verdicts, and you're like, okay, yeah, we understand, but they're giving away the house, and it's basically destroying this company that's going to go under, and everyone there's going to lose their job. So I just think there should be a balance. I don't know what that is. Maybe you disagree with me, but I'm just not sure. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that doesn't happen too often. But there should be maybe reasons sometimes on caps, because you just don't always know whether or not the jury is going to really understand it.
Well, first, Nick, that's what we have trial judges and appellate courts for.
So they're going to explain it to them. Yeah. They'll explain it. They're going to have, and they'll probably get to hear arguments from both sides.
And they fix it. If the verdict is too high, what most people don't know is the trial judge then revisits that verdict after the verdict. If the judge says, whoa, this thing is out of proportion to what the evidence is, he can simply cut the verdict. Or the case can be appealed, and then you've got the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, two more levels of review, who can look at the verdict and decide whether it's out of of character, but more to the point, this very question was asked by the Supreme Court. One of the Supreme Court justices asked the state of Tennessee, their counsel, name a verdict, a so-called outrageous or out-of-bounds verdict, where these caps would have been appropriate to keep it, within within what we would deem to be a reasonable range. They couldn't name a case. Okay. And when was the last time, Nick, you read in the newspaper about an outrageous jury verdict that went way out of bounds of what a case was worth?
Yeah. Or, on the other hand, I'm trying to think. I think I've read of some where there are caps. There are caps on suing for municipalities, maybe not in malpractice cases. Remember several years back there was a transformer that blew on 2nd Avenue, and this poor family was just walking by. Yeah, I guess that, and the oil from the transformer spilled.
Burned him alive.
And there was a cap because I know it's separate for cities. You can only sue for so much. And I think the city made good. And again, who knows? It was just a malfunction on the transformer. These things happen. But that family needed to be taken care of. And I remember thinking, that's all this family's going to get for a devastating injury like that?
Yeah, governments are different because you couldn't sue the government.
Right,
there was an old doctrine, goes back to English law, where the king could do no wrong. Well, we changed that. We allowed lawsuits against governments. But in doing that, we put a cap on because the idea was that we don't want the state treasuries to be too depleted by handling lawsuits. At that time, the cap was $180,000. As a result of that particular incident, the legislature changed the cap and moved it to $300,000.
Which is still?
It's still too low. This man you're talking about, he literally burned alive. I mean, you tell me any worse way to die than burning alive.
And his spouse was right there with him. And
watched the whole thing happen right in front of him.
Right. So there's an example where I thought, okay, well, they're going to be taking, and that's millions, you would think. 180,000? There's something wrong with that. Listen, we'll take a break because I hear your point on caps. When we come back, we've got some calls coming in. The number 737-7587. Our guest is malpractice attorney Clint Kelly. We'll take your calls and continue our conversation with him right after this. Stay with us.